As Rangers fans, we know that a goaltender is the backbone of a hockey team. At Abundant Wealth Management, we are your financial backbone, offering financial planning, wealth management, tax planning, and estate planning services. To schedule your free consultation, head to www.abundant-wealth.com. That's www.abundant-wealth.com. Abundant Wealth Management. Live, plan, triumph.
You're listening to Rangers Radio, your home for end-to-end coverage of the New York Rangers. With your hosts, Brendan Azoff, Zach Domino, and Steve Pappas. Blue Shirts fans, the puck drops now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Rangers Radio. I am Brendan. With me is Zook. Steven is out sick tonight, so we are on a 3-week stretch where we have not had the three of us on the screen at the same time. Hopefully, we'll get that back on track next week. But speaking of back on track, we all thought the Rangers were in that direction. 10-game point streak. Everybody was feeling good. January thought it was going to be, the best month of the season, and it probably was in the grand scheme of things. But now as January creeps towards the end, they are on a 2-game losing streak, losing a heartbreaker against Colorado, and then just an absolute shellacking against Carolina. So before we dive into all that fun stuff, Zook, how's everything going, my man?
It was better. It was better during the first half of January. I know you're the same way. It's sickening how much these teams can sway how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis. I know I haven't been here in a week or two, but man, oh man, was I getting excited again for when the Rangers were on. My wife was getting excited when the Rangers were on. It became appointment television again to watch them, but man, have they regressed back to what they were before the season. Before the turnaround in early January. And I'm going to rant and I'm going to rave and I'm going to say, some outlandish things and probably curse people out. But I was thinking about it on the drive to work today. I just want to get your thoughts about this. And I was thinking, What is really wrong about the Rangers? And I think your ceiling is capped when you don't really have a first line. They just don't have a first line. I know I've been, tweeting it from the account and saying it in the group for quite some time now. And sometimes I got to eat my words when I say it, but 10, 16, and 13 are just not what they were last year. And last year they got away because their offense was so good and so lethal that we didn't quite realize how bad their defense was, because if they gave up a goal, they would score 2. If they gave up 2, they would score 3. Those guys just don't play defense. So they just can't be your first line. So really, this team is made up of one second line, if you want to call 10, 16, and 13 that, 2 third lines with the Hedel and the Mika line, and a fourth line that's a lot of nights looking like our second best line. So the team ceiling is really capped. It's what do you expect them to do if Igor isn't quite standing on his head? And we'll get into that probably today about some other goalies that have been signed, and does that contract now put a real ceiling on this team when you see guys that have already been playing just as good as him over a decent sample size the last few years are getting contracts that are half the size? But I think the real problem, if you just want to get to the nuts and bolts of this team, is they don't have a first line. So how far can you go when you don't have a line you can rely on night in and night out? And is that kind of what you're getting from this team right now? That we're a 2-line, 2-3 lines, and a fourth line really is the makeup of this team offensive wise.
Yeah, I think the regression is surprising, right? Listen, Mika Zibanejad regressed a little bit last year. He still had 72 points in the season. His pace is nowhere near that right now, and it's just what happened. It's not even a lackluster season in terms of he's getting his chances and things aren't going his way, because he's 1 for 11 on breakaways, so he's certainly gotten his chances to score. But he can't handle a puck. He's not playing the defensive style that we used to see him playing. It's just he's disinterested. And then you look at his, best friend on the team and other longest tenured Rangers, Chris Kreider. Chris Kreider's a shell of himself.
Dude, when he didn't put that goal in, I texted in the group, what's his value if he can't tip goals in on the
that was automatic. Automatic. It didn't matter how hard the pass was the last 2-3 years. He was putting the stick on his skate and just redirecting it right in every single time. And it's just, I personally think that he's got to be the first, shoe to drop. He's got to go. You free up $6.5 million. It's time to part ways. I think that he was on track to have his number retired as a Ranger if they found a way to win the Cup. He's had his chance with multiple teams, hasn't happened. I think that's got to be the first guy. But, the narrative, you briefly alluded to it with Igor. The narrative has been the contract's bad. And, you could fall on either side of that coin. I'm not going to argue that right now. But I find it hysterical that the $11.5 million goaltender is the contract people are upset about when he shows up in the playoffs every single time they make it. But the guy that's actually the highest paid player on the team in Artemi Panarin, who never shows up in the postseason and who has been an absolute atrocity defensively his entire career, but the last couple of games he's letting his poor offensive play carry himself over into the defensive side, has never gets discussed, because that contract comes off the books at the end of next year. I'd rather have $11.5 million goaltender that shows up when it matters most and get rid of that contract, fill it with a couple of players that might be able to show up in the postseason. So to me right now, Artemi Panarin's in the doghouse, bigger than Zibanejad and Kreider over the last two games, just because of how poorly he's played offensively and how poorly he's played defensively. And like you said, that line used to outscore their defensive woes. He's not doing that right now, and his defensive mistakes are glaring.
And in a weird way, and obviously, like, it's crazy because you can look at just last year and it's such a different story. He doesn't really fit the modern NHL of what you see a lot of these like superstars that are big, that are strong, that are fast. He's all skill. And obviously there's a place for that, but I don't think that place is, being a lead dog anymore. Like, I think he needs someone on the other end of his passes to finish them. I think he needs a lot of help from his two other forwards to play A+ defense at all times to be able to hide him. But I mean, look, there's still times where you can be blown away where when he has the puck on his stick and he's able to make some moves and juke and go back and forth. But a lot of times it's happening near the blue line. It's not happening near the goal. It's no creation. It's just a little back and forth in the way that Capo Caco used to do that. He's just really doing nothing for me. And yeah, he still has a killer shot that certain games he's able to put one in. But I think the days are over that Artemi Panarin can be the best offensive player on your team and you can be a Stanley Cup contender. So then who do you look at? You look at guys like Mika. You look at guys like Alexei Lafreniere that has absolutely been abysmal since he got that contract. And the sad thing is, in like 3 years, we're going to be having the same conversations probably about him that we're having about these guys. But there's really no top-end offensive player. Like, is Adam Fox our best offensive player? Like, that's sad, because then you watch like guys like COL CAR and stuff like that. And obviously there's the other side of guys like that with their defense, but Adam Fox doesn't have that ability. So where are you getting offense from? We can't score on the power play. We have a better chance of scoring on the penalty kill. And it's like, I'm not sure. Like, Will Cooley has regressed. I think we always knew that the points weren't going to keep up the way that they were, but they slotted him next to Mika Zibanejad, and he's disappeared. Riley Smith is what he is. Philip Hedl has moments, but he can't finish. And at the end of the day, in 41 games, he's got 20 points, and that's kind of the rate he's been scoring throughout his career. Like, he may just be a guy that never reached his full potential and maybe a C3, which is fine. But, you can't count on that guy to carry your team. Chris Kreider, like you said, is a shell of himself. And then the sad thing is you're looking at top points list, and Capo Caco is still up here. But he's on someone else's team where now he has more points probably than anyone else on this team since he's been traded. So I'm not exactly sure where you go. Like, the sad thing is I thought the defense was getting a little better, and I started talking myself into, hey, Keandre Will Borgen, Adam Fox, Braden Schneider, that can be a future core. The last few games, that is thrown out the window.
See, but
I'm not sure who you build around.
I give the defense a pass because I think the turnovers have killed them. And if you're
and they're flying the zone again, like you used to say, they're flying the zone like crazy, and it's like they're pressing.
It's 5 feet on either side of the blue line is the gray area, right? And from when you're starting out playing travel hockey as a kid to the professional levels, you're always told that area of the ice is the most dangerous spot for turnovers. And it's not necessarily because of how close it is to your defensive zone or, you're right in that bubble, but it's because if you are going with your momentum to the offensive zone and turn over there, it's an odd man rush going the other way every single time. And that is where the Rangers are trying to make their plays and where they're failing to make their plays, a la the Colorado Avalanche game-winning goal with 17 seconds left. Panarin making the turnover against Carolina in the first couple of minutes against where he turned it over to that led to the Svechnikov goal. It was right outside his own blue line. Those areas are where they're turning the puck over and they're leading to goals. And as a defenseman, you can't recover because now the other team has speed coming the other way. You're thinking that you're going up the ice and it gets brought right back down into your own end. So every single play that they're making inside the blue line, whether it's their side or the offensive side of the ice, I'm like, what are you doing? And then you look at the fourth line, right? And Adam Edstrom, low-key, is the fastest player on the team. I don't know if anybody's looked at the metrics, but his stride's so long he can move. What does that line do every time? They get the puck, they chip it in, they forecheck, and they create the most chances right now on the New York Rangers. It's just a model that you would think the top nine looking at that goes, we have a little more skill than these guys, but how simplified their game is works. Let's simplify our game, get into the offensive zone, and then use our skill to create offense. And when the Rangers do that, they go on 10-game point streaks. And when they don't, they start to lose games. And in a modern day where everybody is building teams based on skill, it seems, and speed, I should say, too, the New York teams and the Islanders and Rangers are the only two teams left that are just archaic in their style of roster. The Islanders can't get out of their contracts. The Rangers can't get out of theirs. And they're just stuck with aging, slow guys that are trying to do cute things in the middle of the zones all the time. And it doesn't work anymore. It's sad. And I'm tired of watching the same players make the same mistakes and then the kids getting scratched and the Laviolette deciding that the third period was the time he was going to change lines the other night when the second period they could have had 3 to 4 goals easily if the puck bounced their way. It's just bad coaching and 3 or 4 guys that are just rotten apples this year. It's been miserable to watch it.
So they have 5 forwards that are averaging over a half point a game. And let's give the lowest guy on that list, Will Cooley, a pass because he's a +6. And I think we can all say for what we expected Will Cooley to be, he's been fine. The other 4 are Temi Panarin, Vincent Trocheck, Alexei Lafreniere, and Mika Zibanejad. And their combined plus-minus is 48. So the guys that are scoring are giving up more than they're scoring. And I know plus-minus in no way is a perfect stat. But we know these guys are the ones contributing to it. Like this 10, 16, 13 line is abysmal. They were the goal a game line last year. They must be giving up a goal a game line this year.
Well, the Mika's a -25.
Yeah, Miko's a -25, and I'll get to him. But this other line plays no defense. You talked about the Panarin turnovers from recent games. Look, Borgen made a bad pass to Panarin when Makar came out of the box. But man, that was the worst effort I think I've ever seen from a professional athlete. And there's been talks about, I know Cam Newton went on a thing today, so people were talking about him in the Super Bowl. But I get you're tired. But there's 15 seconds left. You're making $11.5 million, and a team is looking at you to be the guy to turn it around. And you can't get down the ice one last time. You can't do anything, even get in his way. Hook him, do something. Because at least if you do that, we get a point. But it wasn't even like he tried and didn't have anything left in the tank. He just gave up. And maybe he didn't have anything left in the tank, but we'll never know because he didn't even try and get back. And that's just, if your lead dog has that personality, everyone else kind of follows. And then Mika, man. It's just sick watching him play. It's sick how much I enjoy hating on him now. And I was always that guy, like at the beginning of the year, like you're crazy if you're hating on a guy because at the minimum, what else can we do except root for him? Like he doesn't play offense. He doesn't even come close to hitting the net when he shoots. No. He can't score on breakaways. He doesn't even put moves on guys. He's just shooting it at them. And his defense, he's getting absolutely moved. At least when he didn't score, didn't have points in the past, he was a stalwart defensively. If there was a puck battle against the boards in the defensive zone, he was putting up a fight. People are making him look sick out there. People that aren't even top-line centers, the guys that he used to go against, because he's being buried on what some would call our second, some would call our third line. So he's not even going up against some top lines of other teams certain nights. He's just getting absolutely worked. Like -25 is abysmal. That means on average, he's averaging when Mika Zibanejad is on the ice every night, he's averaging losing his shifts by minus half a goal a game. That's abysmal.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous for the guy that came into your season as 1C. And again, there's nothing really to do that you really got to consider selling off as much as you can sell off. Because quite honestly, who are you going to sell off that's genuinely going to hurt this team? No one you're selling off is going to be good. If you can find a way to move Kreider, he's been a 0. If God willing, we trick someone and hold them at gunpoint to take Mika, he's been a 0. Lindgren, good riddance. There's just so many guys that we could trade that if we hold on to them, it will be an absolute sin by Chris Drury. I know we saw the article that if we keep winning, the team is going to find it tough to move on from Ryan Lindgren because they don't want to break up that pair. Give me a break. Ryan Lindgren is dog shit. He brings nothing on offense. He's getting absolutely worked on defense. Move Braden Schneider up to first left D for the rest of the year and see what he could do because Lindgren's not it. But you really got to consider moving guys, and you can't wait till the last moment because you even brought up a guy like Chris Kreider. Since he's been back, he's only hurt his value.
Yep.
The guy had a bad back, and you could have probably traded him for more than he could have gotten now. So I don't even know what you're going to get for these guys. And Drury seems to be such a guy that if he's not getting somewhat of what he's worth, he's going to hold on to these guys and be like, hey, a low round pick or a mid round pick isn't even worth it. But those are the moves that the Rangers need to do to replenish the stock of picks that they have, that you ultimately don't even need to make those picks in the future. But those are the picks where, let's say in 2 or 3 years, we're back in it. And for one of the
you just muted yourself, my guy. You must have hit something on that mic. Well, Zook was in the middle of a rant and he muted himself. So I'll go solo for a little bit. I'll take over. But
we're back.
Yeah, there you go. He's back. He's back.
But like, you gotta move guys for any asset at this point because any mid-round picks are more valuable to this team than the way that some of these players are playing. And I know as Rangers fans, we've sort of been spoiled in the past where we've always been in it. We've always had a chance. We've always been buying rentals. It's not going to happen this year. It's just not. We got fooled. And I was probably the biggest guy that got fooled because I was literally sitting there thinking we were going to make the playoffs a week ago. Like I was so sure. Vegas was so sure because our odds were like
they
at
still
some
can.
moment. But like we're so bad. We lead the league in 2 things. We lead the league in quote unquote good looking passes that the guy that the player passes to actually has a way worse shot at the net than the guy that's making the pass. Like I've never seen guys that are wide open in the slot pass it to the guy near the boards for a shot.
Yeah,
like it's ridiculous. And
how
about these breakaways that we're passing backwards? It's now 3 this year. Like, what the hell is going on that you're 1-0? Like, it's you and the goalie, and you're passing it backwards. 2 of the 3 times the pass backwards didn't even end up in a shot. And one of them, we made the pass so late that the guy didn't even have time to make a move. These guys are playing so bad that now it's just a complete mental thing for them. That they don't, unless there's nothing that they can do physically, there's nothing that they can do skill-wise to turn around until they get there mentally. And there's little things that they keep showing you, a la passing it backwards on breakaways that show that they just don't have what it is. And we can shit on the Islanders because they have the same makeup as us. But man, I watch them from time to time, and they may just they don't have as much skill as us. But I think mentally they're a little bit more there than us. I think they've won 5 in a row at this point.
Yeah,
they're certainly not
what the Rangers were
They're
doing.
certainly not passing it backwards when they have breakaways. Sorokin's better than Igor, and that sucks to say, but like the stats showed it. You don't think he is? No. But like
no, I think he's had better stretches throughout his career, but Igor's numbers in the postseason.
Take out the playoffs. Take out the playoffs because now what you got to realize, our whole thing was Igor was good enough to get us to the playoffs, and that's why you gave him that contract. And his regular season numbers the past few years not even considered to be in the Vezina. So to get the contract that he gets at that money, he needs to guarantee that the floor is the playoffs. And look, he's been playing better as of late, but I certainly don't feel bad for the guy. Like, there's a lot of really bad goals and really bad game-changing goals that he's given up. And does it suck as a goalie when you're basically playing defense 5-on-2? And are some of his high-end analytics still high-end, like goal saves above expectations? Sure. But like, he's given up some bad goals. The one I go back to is the Avs goal that lost. Like, there's some point-losing goals he's giving up. And yeah, maybe we're in those moments because some of the other saves that he's made during the game kept us there. But when you beg, cry, and steal for the contract that he wanted, it's not, you can't be good for 55 minutes. You can't be good for 56 minutes. You can't be good for 57 minutes. You got to carry us for seasons, and you got to get us to the playoffs so then you can do what you do when you're in the playoffs. But look, if we don't get to the playoffs this year, what does Igor being good in the playoffs get us? You know what I mean? So I was someone who was all in the 11.5. I was someone who was like, he's worth it. He's not worth it. He's not. And that's less about him and just more about what goalies are going for. Like Logan Thompson. Yes, he's not Igor.
We can get into this because that comparison is the most absurd comparison I've ever seen.
Who would you rather?
Igor Shesterkin
At 11.5?
It's not even a debate. It's not even a debate. Logan Thompson has never been the starter on an NHL team. He has split the crease with every goalie he's played. He has played significantly less games than Shesterkin has this year because he's splitting it with Charlie Lindgren. Now, his numbers are good, but he was good on Vegas in split time. Vegas, every goalie's good on Vegas, so you could take that with a grain of salt. He then goes to a Capitals team. This is his first year there. They're all of a sudden playing like world beaters. They're not giving up anything defensively. Charlie Lindgren's numbers are good too. Logan Thompson is a better goalie than Lindgren, but he hasn't been a number one goalie. Igor Shesterkin is the number one goalie. He got paid $11.5 million. You could have problems with that. Sure. I understand people have problems with $11.5 million. The price tag looks like a lot in comparison to what it's been in the past, but relative to the cap going up, it's not as bad as you think. But Igor Shesterkin might have more playoff starts than freaking Logan Thompson has this season alone. Like, it's ridiculous to me that's even being a
comparison. But think about how good the teams Logan Thompson has been on.
And that's what I'm saying. If you put Shesterkin on the Caps right now, they don't even have a loss.
But you can't because of the contract, which is the problem.
Oh, he's not on that contract right now.
Yeah. But like, there's something to be said about these $5 million, $6 million goalies are good enough. Like, even look at Jacob Markstrom. I know he's hurt now, but he's been playing out of his mind. Like, I was the biggest believer, and you could pay Igor whatever he wants, but I'm starting to think that, like, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to build a team around a guy that's making 11.5 when, if we're all being honest, his regular season numbers are good. I don't think he's this generational goaltender that we can count on every year to automatically be in the Vezina. And if you're making that type of money, you gotta be. You just gotta be. And I'm not saying that we'd be better off with, $2-3 million goalies that are switching off every night, and you can build a team around them. But I mean, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what the Rangers can build in front of him. And some of the onus has to be on him. Like, he has to understand, and everyone has to understand that he begged for a contract that we gave him. So now he has to make up that difference himself. Whatever that difference is between, $6 million and 11.5, a $5.5 million left defenseman that we could put next to Adam Fox, Igor's got to make that difference. And I just think there's been too many times this year that he hasn't been good. And there's too many goals that are just like, what the hell are you doing? And I thought that the stretch that he was going on, where he was playing out of his mind, was going to get him going. But like, he's got to win some games. He's got to do that thing where 45 shots are on net and just nothing goes in. And I know that's a crazy thing to say, and it's basically asking him to somewhat do the impossible. but he's being paid to do the impossible at this point. He's broken every single goalie contract record, and now it's not even close between with a lot of good goaltenders that have teams that are going to the playoffs, and he's making. And we're going to look at the playoffs. The playoffs is probably going to be a list of goalies making $4 million to $7 million. And I know Igor's not making that yet, but that is the contract he's going to be making. It's only going to get harder from here to build a team around him.
It's not. This is what I'm saying. It's not harder to build a team around an $11.5 million goalie. It's harder to build a team when you have Chris Drury as your general manager to build it around an $11.5 million goalie. They're getting rid of an $11.6 million contract at the end of next season. The cap could be going up to $100 million. They're going to wind up trading Chris Kreider at $6.5 million. They don't have anybody else that's really making a ton of money besides Fox and Panarin right now, and then Zibanejad. So the problem isn't that you signed a goalie to 11.5. The problem is that the players that you paid before the goalie are not good, and they never deserved those contracts. And then on top of it, they somehow got these no movement clauses. And, people want to compare Shesterkin to Logan Thompson because of the contract right now. Shesterkin's faced 300 high danger shots this year. Logan Thompson's faced 210. That is 90 fewer high danger shots against. Do you think Logan Thompson's numbers are as good if he's faced 300? No, they're absolutely not. Expected goals against this season, Shesterkin's second highest at 113. The only person that has a higher one is Sam Montembeault on Montreal. You know where Logan Thompson ranks on that list? He ranks 19th. He has 86 expected goals against. Okay, so nearly 40 fewer expected goals against on Logan Thompson. The Capitals just play better defense. If you switch these roles, it's a completely different undertaking. And what I don't understand is that people want to constantly put it on Shesterkin, and he hasn't been good to his standards this year. But the dude has a career .919 save percentage, even when you factor in this season, where he still has a higher save percentage than Ilya Sorokin. And I just. It's not the numbers you want to see, but the numbers are skewed because of how poorly they've played in front of him. And the only reason that he got that contract is because if they didn't sign him, this team is a dumpster fire without the goaltender. They could have never gotten anywhere without Igor Shesterkin the last 2-3 years, especially in the postseason of conference finals, because you could look at the shots on goal, the chances in all of those series that they won. It wasn't even remotely close. So I think what you do is you have your $11.5 million goaltender penciled in, and you take the rest of the team and say, well, you guys aren't playing up to snuff. We're going to find ways to get rid of you all. And that's what it has to be. And it's not even getting rid of them right now, because right now you probably can't move many of them. But when Zibanejad has a bad game, he should be sat. When Artemi Panarin's turned the puck over, he should be sat. When Chris Kreider is claiming he has a back injury and not putting goals in on easy tap-ins, he shouldn't be playing. He should be sat. But instead of holding those guys accountable, they just keep rolling them out there, letting them stay on the power play for 2 minutes. And it's no accountability with the players. All of the onus falls on the goaltender because he's trying to cover up these mistakes. And the coach is just making every single decision that you can make incorrectly this season. And I think until people start to actually turn the attention to the coaching staff and the players and forget about the contract that Igor is going to be getting next year, there's no fixing this team, because $11.5 million for a goaltender that's been really, really, really good his whole career and is having a tough year because the team stinks isn't the problem. And listen, I don't think $11.5 million is what he should have gotten. I think it's a high amount. But to say that they can't build a team around him, I think those people are wrong. And to say that he's the problem, I think those people are really wrong. All it takes is one glance at some of the numbers and one glance at what other games are happening around the league and the chances that are happening in those games versus the chances that happen nightly against Igor. It's absurd, man. I mean, Jonathan Quick has been trying to get his 400th win for the last 2 to 3 starts spread out over 3.5 weeks, and he can't do it because he's giving up 5 goals a game. And in those same exact scenario games, Igor Shesterkin hasn't been doing that during that 10-game point streak. It's just a different style, a different breed. And no, he's not as consistent in the regular season as Lundqvist was, but his postseason numbers are pretty damn good. And the only way you get to the postseason is with a good team. And the Rangers haven't had a good team in a long time. They've had a really good goaltender.
Yeah, I just feel like the modern NHL is kind of how I look at the modern NFL, where like, I feel like a decent goalie can be brought up by a better team around him more so than a great goalie can bring up the rest of the team. So it's not even an Igor specific thing as much as it's like I look at it like a running back. You got to get an offensive line, you got to get a quarterback, you got to get a receiver, you got to get all those things, and it's like a luxury position. And obviously, it's a little different because a goalie, what they can literally, it's the one position in sports that can win you a game because nothing's in. But it's going to be very, very interesting to see what the Rangers can do in front of him, because the unfortunate part of it is, like, my feelings are, I think where I see it the same as you, but also see it different, is if you were building a team from scratch, I think you were better off giving Igor 11.5 than if you're doing it, in the real life scenario where, yeah, I'd love to get rid of all these guys. I wish they were all coming off the books this year, but we know how Drury does it. One guy comes off the books for $8 million. He's not going to like sit on that. He's going to insert someone else and overpay them for $8 million. The next guy's going to come off for 11 million, and then he's going to give someone else that money. And I just think an 11.5. I mean, it's honestly bad to say because Artemi Panarin's like making that money, and he's not better than Igor. But I think good contract wise, an $11.5 million forward can get you further than an $11.5 million goaltender. If like vice versa, if you were to split up like 15 million between a goalie making 11.5 and a forward making 3.5 and a goalie making 3.5 and a forward making 11.5, like, we just really need to get some top end talent on this team, because as good as Igor is, we see what happens time after time. That I guess it's nice to have him settled in for 8 years, but I kind of look at it like a running back. Like we saw what Saquon was on the Giants, and we see what Saquon is on the Eagles. I just think the team around you is more important, and we see it with all these teams. Like you brought up the Vegas Knights. So many of these teams have like goalies I've never even heard of that are having like fantastic seasons, and obviously, like you brought up, their analytics aren't nearly as good as Igor's, because Igor is making these ridiculous saves and his gold saves above expectation. But I think building a team around him does become a little bit more tedious, because I don't even think the Rangers have that much. I don't even think I was looking at it, like, if the Rangers don't I want the Rangers to trade people, but I don't know how they're going to get people to take some of these contracts on. I think the Rangers, after they signed a bunch of people last year, I saw a bunch of the same people back next year. I saw numbers floated around like we might only have like $6 million in cap.
If they don't trade anybody, yeah, but they're going to have to.
And they're going to have to eat a bunch of that money probably. Like, I don't think anyone's taking Kreider at $6.5 million.
You'd be surprised. I mean, somebody took Trouba at 8.
That's fair. Do we have to? Yeah, I mean,
no, the Raiders didn't. So you could find.
But let me say this: I don't think the Rangers would do to Kreider what they did to Trouba. I know it's an impossible thing to say because we've literally done it to Gaudreau, we've done it to Trouba. But in the like, I heard and I don't know if this is true. I heard the Ducks did that because they had him like meet a floor, and they have other guys they may trade away.
Injuries,
and Trouba's contract gets them to 8. Like.
Somebody's going to.
Is there any good team is there any good team that's going to take Chris Kreider for the 6.5, or are we going to have to attach something to that? And certainly no one's taking Mika. I don't think anyone's taking Panarin at 11.5. So are we running the same thing back next year?
I don't know what they're going to wind up doing, but I know that giving a guy that has 266 games at 28 years old, $4.1 million for 5 years isn't the answer to that either. So it's just, I think they have a really bad GM. And I think that they're in a pickle that they are in right now, because instead of going out and making that one move that would have gotten them over the top in the last 3 seasons, he continuously traded first and second round picks for aging superstars that didn't do anything for him, and Tyler Mott every year. So it was ridiculous that was the route he took. And I always go back to this, especially now. They would not include Capo Caco in a trade for Jake Gensel, and then traded Capo Caco for Will Borgen. And I knew right away that Caco would do well in Seattle because, one, there's no pressure there. That's not a good team. There's no hockey pressure in that city, right? It's a lot different than New York, where everything's being analyzed. He's not doing what he just did over the last, 18 games. here in New York. It just never was going to happen and materialize here for him. So good for him for getting a chance, but there's no pressure in Seattle. So I hold all his stats with a grain of salt because he's playing a lot of minutes and that team's losing. But I digress on that. I'm not talking about Capo Caco anymore. It's just move after move that's bad. And the GM ultimately is going to be the guy that makes or breaks a team, even though he's not playing. And he's giving out contracts like they're candy. There's just no rhyme or reason to who's signing where, how much they're getting, how many years they're getting. Like, if Will Borgen was demanding 5 years at $4.1 million from the jump, okay, walk. We'll find somebody else. To me, it just doesn't make sense. You have Fox, you have Schneider, who you're going to sign, and then you can call it Mancini, who has played good during his minutes. Like, give him a chance. Why are you giving 5 years at $4.1 million to somebody already after 10 games? It just, none of it makes sense what he does to me. And when you look at the contracts, it all adds up. And Chris Kreider's contract, when he signed and he went on those good contracts, sure. I think that right now somebody would take that contract. And I'm not saying his contract's bad, but I'm saying that there's no need to pay him $6.5 million when you are trying to build a team, because clearly he has not done his job with the Rangers, right? That core has not done its job. Every other NHL organization that is ultra competitive, you look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, there's no love loss and loyalty to everybody. They build their team the way it needs to be built. There were guys on the fourth line in Tampa, third line in Tampa, that were valuable and integral parts of Stanley Cups, like Gaudreau and Blake Coleman, Yanni Gourde. They were gone, but they still won another cup, and they still were competitive and still are competitive because they brought in guys at a good cap hit that fit the need of the team. Drury is just giving out contracts to whoever wants them and whoever wants to play on the Rangers, when the reality is their prospect cupboard is pretty bare. Their pick cupboard is really bare. And that's because over the course of the last 3 to 4 seasons, he's depleted it by making bad trades. So he's making bad signings at bad trades. That's what ruins a team, not a goaltender at that contract hit. And yeah, unfortunately, not just 1 or 2 players have regressed this year. It's been 4 to 5. And unfortunately, the coach has regressed with them. And unfortunately, the GM is trying to do everything he can to make this team worse in the future. And it doesn't make sense. I just didn't get last year when you wouldn't move Kakko. I didn't get why you wouldn't go after Gensel. I mean, they get fixated on one guy, right? Like right now, their fixation is JT Miller. And I could understand wanting to move on from Edel because of his injury history. But when you look at the Rangers roster, he's the only forward that I see every night that has the speed and skill to carry the puck by himself. He's never gotten that top line chance. Everybody else has. Kakko got it. Lafreniere got it. Philip Edel never did. He's always been on the third line. And for some reason, that's the guy that they're going to have to move because of his injury history, which stinks. But it's not JT Miller. He's not the answer. He might be a better two-way forward, but he's older. He's slower. It just fits with what everything they've been doing in the past and not what they're going to have to do in the future to modernize and compete with the upper echelon of teams. I am for a complete teardown of that forward group, and I am for trying to restock it. And I'm not talking about building over 5-7 years through the draft. I hate that shit. Excuse my French, because it doesn't work. It's very rare that you hit on every single player, especially when you're the New York Rangers. So you restock when you can. You sell the players at the deadline that you can sell on expiring deals. You get some picks in, and then you match those picks with some of the contracts that are harder to move. You get rid of them in the offseason. You free up some cap, and you bring in players that fit the mold of what you want the team to be, not what you expect the team to be in the last couple of years. It's just pretty simple to me. And I honestly think I could do the job much better than Drury.
And if you think like Igor is worth that 11.5, a good GM should be able to do this with a team that's still competitive. Igor at 11.5 should be able to carry the team through a season and a half, or 2 seasons that, you're not tearing the whole thing down, but you're saying retooling for a year or 2. For Igor to be worth that, he should be able to, and I'm not saying he's not going to be able to do that in the next 2 years, but he should be able to be that steady force that, it's probably something that can't happen in one offseason with some of the contracts that we have. If you realistically plan out the Rangers, it's probably going to take 2 seasons to really tear it down and build it up with some of the contracts. That the hope is, if you have a smart GM, kind of like what you're saying, you should be able to do both. You shouldn't have to tank to rebuild if you're paying a goalie 11.5, because he should be good enough to look. You may not make the playoffs if you're tearing down a forward group, but at least be where we are now. If you tear it down, we still have hope. We still aren't sure that we're out. We're still fighting for some points and trying to get that second wild card spot. So, like you're saying, it can be done. But the other end of what you're saying, which is also true, is we know what Chris Drury is going to do. He's going to sell off some pieces and then give it to some other people that don't deserve it, with the hopes of putting out the absolute best lineup in game 1 next year, regardless of what it means for our future. And that's just not where this team is. I think the thing we are both in agreement is that, look, I know we have some nice people on the third and fourth line that we like, but if you're asking me, do I want these 12, or would I rather throw these 12 to the garbage and pick out of a hat a certain number of 12 players that equal this cap? We got to go that way, because these 12 guys just aren't it. Yeah, and he's got to be willing to do that. He has to be willing to not go tit for tat, not sell off one person and then give that money right back to someone else. It could take some time. And we just know it all goes back to that letter where the Rangers literally said, we're going to take our time to do it the right way. And they just didn't do that. It's not in this management's DNA to do exactly what's necessary for the actual long-term success of this team. And they're just looking at, how can we win tomorrow's game? And yeah, you always want to have an eye on winning tomorrow's game, but winning tomorrow's game may not give you the best chance to win a Stanley Cup as soon as possible. And Chris Drury can never seem to look at team building through those lenses. Maybe you do have to pay up a little bit for a 1-year deal to clear up next year. You got to get some of these contracts to line up with each other, where there's a year where you can really make a splash. Because like you're saying, he's giving all these deals for for too long of terms, where even though they're coming off, they're not coming off at the same time. So there's really no way for him to rebuild unless he finds a way to really move them all at once. And unfortunately, that's what trades. And that's not with people coming off the books. So, going forward, especially over the next 2 years, and this offseason is going to be huge, he's got to cut back these terms. And maybe that means, you got to give an extra 250,000 to a guy who may not be worth it, but the years are way more important for where this Rangers team is than the money. Because, we talked that they may not have that much money, but they will have money this offseason. And it's going to fucking drive us crazy where we have these restricted free agents that, we like because we're Ranger fans, but they probably deserve 2-year bridge contracts. And, I love Will Borgen, but similar to what we did with Will Borgen, he's going to think he's smart because he saved $50,000 a year because he gave him 2 extra years. You can't do that. You got to realize that some guys, not every guy is going to be part of your future. And you got to be willing to realize that there's different ways to rent a guy. You can get rentals at the trade deadline, but you can also rent guys during the offseason, where you sign guys to 1-year deals, where you sign guys to 2-year deals, where you stop, for the love of God, giving guys no movement clauses. Because even if you sign him for 3 or 4 years and he has no movement clause, that's a year-by-year deal. You can move him at any point. And look, I think I love Will Borgen as much as the next guy. Much more than the next guy. I might be his biggest fan. 5-year deal is crazy. Giving him a sliding scale, no movement clause when you're giving him more years, it's just like, is our self-esteem that low as a team that's been to the conference finals in the last 3 years that we're not going to be a destination for people? It's like people are laughing at these deals that Chris Drury is going at. Like, look, if we made this deal in the offseason because there was a bidding war for Will Borgen, sure. We'd all have to throw our hands up and be like, hey, he played well for us. Other people were looking at it and they were offering him similar and we had to outbid them. But your point, and the point that a lot of other people are making, is spot on. Nobody was offering him 5 years for anything because they couldn't. We constantly bid against ourselves and give
Sean Walker signed with Carolina for the same length, 5 years at $3.6 million, and Sean Walker's a better defenseman.
We should have
the
given.
whole thing makes no sense.
Why couldn't we give him a take it or leave it deal? Like, no one else could sign him.
Why are they rushing to negotiate?
If you want to sign now and you want to know that right now you are secure for the next 5 years. You got to take a hit on the money. Like
They
maybe
re-signed Will Borgen before they offered Will Cooley. Will Cooley should be the guy right now that you're trying to lock up on a team-friendly deal for a few years because you want him to progress on this roster. Instead of signing him in season, they're going to wait for the offseason when they have to negotiate. They're going to give $4.1 million over 5 years to Will Borgen. Like the whole movement that it's ridiculous to me. How many bridge deals have they given their younger players that now winds up they're all free agents at the same time again because everybody's a 2-year deal, 1-year deal. Those are the guys you got to extend long term. And if you don't trust that player is going to develop enough to extend him long term, you have to trade him when he has value. You can't keep giving him 1-year deals and then say, okay, we'll trade you to Seattle for peanuts.
And every good team has those contracts of where you take chances on younger guys that are showing something, and you give them a term that maybe in the first year seems like an overpay, but if they pan out, it's a crazy good contract. Like I know he's a little bit higher than what we're talking about in the 3 or 4 million, but what the Devils did with Jack Hughes is just brilliant. Like he's making what he's making because they took a chance on him. Every other good team has guys making less than they should, while the Rangers are constantly overpaying people because they're either bidding against themselves in season or waiting till the end of the season when other people can take a shot at them. So their contract construction is just abysmal. And then they're giving these people whatever they want because they're waiting to when they have to do that. Will Borgen should have gotten less money. Say we're giving him this amount of years, which I think we all disagree with, but say Drury's like, we're going to give him 5 years. It should be probably a 25 to 30% pay cut of what he got, with absolutely no movement clause. So we could still move him this year potentially. We hamstrung ourselves this year because he was probably going to be someone we would move because he looked decent and could have got something back from. And now we can't even trade him this year.
Yep.
It's just makes no sense. And that's why it's like he just keeps making it worse. Because even when these big contracts come off, it's one guy. Because of the terms we're giving people, and you can't reconstruct the team because one guy making $8 million came off. You can reconstruct the team when 4 guys making $8 million come off, and you have $32 million to do a whole roster overhaul. He doesn't know what he's doing when it comes to giving contracts. And the funny thing was, my dad, who's nowhere into he loves the Rangers, but he's nowhere into this stuff as much as us. He always hated, and I always went against him, because I never thought it was a big deal. He was like, the Rangers are literally the only team that gives over 50% of their roster no movement clauses. No one else does it. No one else gives them more years, more money, and no movements. And it's like, what can you do? You can't construct a roster like this. And it was obvious. I think Will Borgen was a case where Chris Drury wanted to save face and make it look like he made a good deal and thought he would 100%. Outsmart fans and be like, oh, if I'm paying him 5 years, $4.1 million, it means we got a good player back. But no, Mr. Drury, we're all laughing at you for doing the same thing that you've done the last few years, when if you probably waited to the offseason and bid $100,000 more than the next team, Will Borgen would probably be a 3-year, $3.7 million deal. It's crazy.
That's what makes no sense, is that it wasn't. That's not the guy that you have to worry about it. If Will Borgen walks and the Rangers are not okay because of that, then they're in a much more dire situation than I think any of us realize. And
if we wanted him in the offseason, we could have gotten him if we wanted him.
Correct. And I'm looking at the cap space right now. If the cap goes up to $92 million, then the Rangers have 18.7 in cap space, 18.7 million. If it goes up more than that, which I'm not sure if it will, at least not this year, it definitely will after that. But I was listening to 32 Thoughts with Elliot Friedman. He said that, before the trade deadline, they're expected to release new numbers for what the cap is supposed to go up to. And it could be triple digits a lot quicker than we think. So that's the only reason I don't think they're in a situation where they can't build around the goaltender and they can't find a way to maneuver out of some of these deals. But like you mentioned, man, the no movement clauses, the moderate no trades, I don't care if it's an 8-team and it trickles down from 15-10 with Borgen. It doesn't matter. Why? I just don't understand why. It blows my mind. It's like why did you even feel the need to do that? You're extending him in season for 5 years. You're giving him $4.1 million. There's no comparables out there that say that Will Borgen should get $4.1 million. He's got 266 games. He played parts of 4 or 5 seasons in Buffalo. He was a regular with Seattle, didn't have a number. He's a minus 17. There's just no metrics out there that say this guy is a 5-year, $4.1 million contract, and he's going to be out. There's going to be a bidding war for Will Borgen in the offseason. And I like how he's played so far. I don't want to knock the guy.
We got to separate the two things.
It's knocking the GM. It's knocking the GM, not the player. And you're doing that in the same time where you might want to re-sign Keandre Miller, say. Now all of a sudden you have $4.1 million less to work with there.
And you brought that up. Now Keandre's going to ask for $6 million. If Will Borgen's making $4 million,
that was the first reaction.
Yep.
First reaction is, what is Keandre Miller thinking now? And then you got all these forwards. And, the crazy thing is, like, right now, Matt Rempe and Adam Edstrom are both RFAs. The Rangers are going to wind up keeping them because that fourth line has been really good.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see what ludicrous crap they're paying out. These guys should both be $1 million or less. I really have no desire to see anything more than that. Arthur Kaliev is an RFA. The Rangers have his rights now. I would trade his rights to someone else and get some sort of draft.
You like the way that he's been playing?
I am not in love with him. I do not dislike it.
Fine.
He's fine. It doesn't help the Rangers. He's too slow.
He is so slow. He is so slow, and sometimes his shot is nasty, but he can't even get it off because he really can't do anything besides shoot.
Yeah. Will Cooley is an RFA. That's the guy you have to try to lock up for 4 to 5 years. If I was going to
you're Chris Drury, what are you giving him?
If I'm Chris Drury, I would give him the Will Borgen contract. That's what I would have given him, but now it's harder to do that because you gave it to Will Borgen. If you said they signed Will Cooley 5 years, $4 million, I would be like, you know what? That's one of those deals that you just mentioned. It's might be a little bit high right now based on production, but I think he's going to grow into that because he is one of the few responsible two-way forwards that they have, and every team needs that. But then you look at the defense, right? Ryan Lindgren's going to be gone. Keandre Miller's an RFA. You have Vakanainen's an RFA. Zach Jones is an RFA. Zach Jones, if his agent has any morals, they would refuse to sign any contract that's offered by the Rangers and just wait that process out until it goes to arbitration. But they might wind up trading his rights. But then where do you improve, like you said? Well, the only way that you can improve is Trocheck, Kreider are the only two forwards that have big contracts that have moderate no trade clauses where you can work around it. Do I want to? No, but at $5.6 million, if you're really trying to improve, especially if they wind up trading Edel for JT Miller, well, now you have JT Miller. Do you need Trocheck?
I think Trocheck's the guy, and others have said this, that we could get a return on.
Absolutely.
Because of value. And look, I'm shitting on the 10, 16, 13 line, but he's a player that you put on a good team and he helps you win a Stanley Cup.
Absolutely.
For sure.
I think that's why I don't want to move him. I think he's in the middle of a line that's having a down year and a team that's having a down year. And the amount that is asked of him is making it look a little bit worse than it is.
Would you trade Panarin?
I would have traded Panarin 2 years ago. I've been on that trade Panarin train for a while.
Would you eat? How much would you eat?
I wouldn't, and I don't think you have to. I really don't.
What would you get back because of the contract? Do you get nothing? Is it just an offload?
If there's a playoff team that has enough cap space come the deadline this year to acquire Panarin and can make it work over the next season, I don't think that you're going to have to eat anything, and I think you're going to get some kind of return because that's how the league works.
That he's the most disappointing player on the team right now. I think that's one thing.
The last 2 games, yes. I think
people that aren't watching are just looking basically at his box score. His defense has been abysmal, and
career it's been that way.
Yeah, and now it's like it's tough to watch him play defense because for me, I know someone brought it up about Marty Necas. Like, there's just a style of play that does more for you than skill. And it's almost like Panarin doesn't even care about defense. Like, he doesn't even care about defense. He leaves the zone like it's his job to start odd man rushes the other way. And look, it's because I think so highly of him and how talented I think he could be that I would move him. If anybody wanted Panarin, I would shop him. Like, we hear so many names from Chris Drury. That should be the name.
No, they're full no movement, though. Players got to waive it. I don't know if he does.
That's ridiculous.
let's wrap up. We got a ton of people listening, so we appreciate all you guys tuning in.
Dude,
I wonder how many of you are stressed. I know it's like there's always a good amount of people listening, but whenever it's positive stuff, it's a little bit less. Once we get negativity going,
real quick, and
they got Boston twice and Vegas sandwiched in between on a back-to-back this weekend before our next episode.
0-3.
I don't think so. I don't like doing these predictions. First of all, Steven always gets it right in some way. He said 1-1-1 on our last show. They lost 2 games, so he technically predicted the results right. Just one he had going to overtime. I'm gonna say 2-1.
I'm going on Wednesday. I'm going on Wednesday, so I'm gonna pick that as a win. I'm gonna go 1-1-1. I think, and it's gonna be in a backwards order of lose on Saturday, win on Sunday. I'm sorry, lose on Saturday, lose in overtime on Sunday, and win on Wednesday. But I just don't know what to think about this team. Like, they make me upset because, like, I'm almost more upset they did what they did the last 3 weeks because it's there. When they play with structure and they play defense, they're not that bad. And again, they're not great, but you don't got to be great to win the second wild card in the dog shit East. But I mean, it's just some of these teams with much less skill.
Yeah, I think they wind up taking 2 or 3 in this stretch. I'm not sure which 2, but I just have that feeling. Now, let's end it on this. I'm of the belief that going into this weekend, right, they haven't played since Tuesday, so they have 3 days off before they play on Saturday night. Jonathan Quick's going for win 400. They have a back-to-back this weekend. I would start him Saturday against Boston. I think you're going to play Boston 2 times in a 3-day span, 4-day span, whatever it is. I think that if they got him win 400, I think the morale going into Sunday would be so much better. Whereas if they played well on Saturday and then Quick comes in and he can't get 400 again against Vegas, I'd rather have the guy that you're going to give the money to and Igor play the better game. And I think that on a back-to-back, Igor should start that game against Vegas. So I think Quick should go for win 400 on Saturday. It shouldn't be Igor and then Quick like it usually is where the starter gets game 1. I want to see Quick get game 1, give Igor an extra night to prepare for Vegas. That would be
I don't disagree with you at all with what you're saying, but what I will say is I know how Peter Laviolette is. Igor is getting both games against the Bruins. He's just drawing up in his mind like that's a team we're chasing. We need to win points, and that thought process might not even be wrong. But I think Igor is playing in Boston. Jonathan Quick's playing at home against Vegas with the chance to get the 400th on. I feel like it just works in Laviolette's mind, and as we know this year, his mind doesn't make sense a lot because, like you said, that third period line shuffle was one of the many blunders that he did. For
3 shifts, and then they put him right back after they gave a. I can't talk about it anymore. Well, all right. So you say 1-1-1.
1-1-1.
I say 2-1-0. 2-1-0.
And what do you think Steven would say?
Steven, you would probably say 0-3 or 1-2.
Let's say, based on the fact that Steven's normally right, that he's going to say 3-0, and let's speak it into existence.
All right. Well, he can't vouch for himself, so I like that. We will see what winds up happening over the course of those 3 games, but 2 massive games against Boston, especially the way the Rangers are going. And honestly, every single game is very meaningful if they have any type of chance of making the postseason.
30 games, baby.
You ask, there's like 50% of Rangers fans that don't want them to make the playoffs because they think James Higgins is realistic. And I can tell you right now, the Rangers aren't bad enough to get James Higgins. But
and if we got him, he'd suck anyway.
Probably. That's the nature of the beast. But we appreciate all of you for listening. Hopefully next Thursday we could talk about a couple more wins instead of just some losses and some bad play. But it's the Jekyll and Hyde season of the New York Rangers, man. It just continues to go up and down, a lot more down than up. And even when they get your hopes up like that in the month of January, they find a way to end the month on a big down note with the shutout against Carolina.
But we still got a chance, baby.
We still got a chance. There's always a chance. And next Thursday, we will talk about how there's still a chance after a couple more losses. All right.
Peace.
Peace, everybody.